Hi, Rams. All right, so we're going to practice working on our integer operations on our number line for a minute. So I just want to review a couple of things with you, okay? When you are multiplying numbers, let's say I had 2 times 3, okay? Because they're both positive, one number, it could be 2 jumps, and each jump is 3 units. So I jump 3 spaces, and I jump 3 more spaces. So I'm all jumping in the positive direction here, so my answer would be 6. I could also look at that and say it's 3 jumps, and each jump is 2 spaces in that direction. And we also end up at 6. So these two are the same thing. One could be 2 times 3, and one could be 3 times 2. That's pretty easy. But what happens when one of those numbers is negative? So let's say I had negative 2 times 4. All right, well, one number is going to have to represent the number of jumps, and the other number has to represent the distance and direction. Okay, if I wanted to look at the number of jumps with this negative 2, can I jump negative 2 times? No, I cannot jump a negative number of times. So that means the number of jumps, how many, would have to be 4. So that means I start at 0 and I'm going to make 4 jumps. But each jump is going to be 2 spaces in the negative direction. So 2 spaces, 2 spaces, 2 spaces, and 2 spaces. And that is where we end up. Now, if you see a picture that would look like, let's say, this right here. And it would say, what does this represent? Well, you can look at that in a different way and say, well, now I just need to name the equation. Well, I have 2 jumps, so my 2 cannot be negative because I cannot have a negative number of jumps. So 2 jumps is positive, but each jump would be 5 spaces in the negative direction. Your answer is where you end up at. Okay, this could also be written if you think back to elementary when you learned about fact families. Okay, this multiplication problem could also be a division problem. It would be negative 10 divided by 2 equals negative 5, or it could be negative 10 divided by negative 5 equals 2. Either of those would mean the same thing. All right, but just to make for sure that we're clear, okay, remember, multiplying and dividing look like these little jumps. Okay, that's different than adding or subtracting. Adding your integers on a number line starts with a straight arrow. So let's say I'm going to add 2 plus 3. Okay, I always start at 0. I'm going to move 2 spaces in the positive direction because it's a positive 2, and I stop there. I'm going to start a new arrow and go 3 spaces in the positive direction, and where I stop, that is my answer. Now, I could go in the negative direction. What if I drew this and this? What would this represent? Well, I always start at 0, and I went 4 spaces in the negative direction, and then I went another 2 spaces. I didn't go 6 spaces here, so it's 2 spaces in the negative direction, and I ended up at negative 6. Okay? Now, when your signs are opposite, so I have some positive numbers and some negative numbers. Let's say I had negative 5 plus 3. So I start at 0. I'm going to go 5 spaces in the negative direction, and I stop. Then I'm going to go 3 spaces in the positive direction. So 1, 2, 3 spaces, and where I stop, that is my answer. All right, this is just a little review of your integer models using a number line. So just look at the difference here between the multiplying and dividing ones up here and all of your adding ones. Now, we don't really model subtraction on a number line because remember, we just change all of our subtraction problems to addition. Okay? All right, there you go, Rams.